Hi, my name is AJ Ellis. Today I have the opportunity to attend a protest held on behalf of Jack Yantis, who was shot and killed by deputies of the Adams County Sheriff's Department in an incident that began when Yantis was called by the ACSO to come take care of one of his cattle that had wandered into the road and caused an accident on Highway 95 near Council, Idaho. It has been nearly 3 weeks, yet there has been no explanation given and no release of video or audio from the day of the incident. As someone sympathetic to the cause promoted by the protest, I hope to share something of the feelings and concerns that were in evidence today, as well as spread the story for others to take into consideration.
So, what's this protest all about today?
So, a couple weeks ago, actually 3 weeks ago now, Jack Yantis was a rancher in Adams County, Idaho, and he was gunned down police. And since this incident, it's been shoved under the rug. The FBI is investigating, the Idaho Attorney General is investigating, but nothing's been released to the public. They won't even confirm whether or not they have video, but there were dash and body cams. So we want to see the video released. That's what we're out here for. That video needs to be released to the public so that this doesn't get shoved under the rug.
Based on what I'm hearing, there were a number of witnesses, and none of them have indicated in any way that Jack Yantis is some sort of violent aggressor or anything like that.
No.
Came there with some sort of vendetta against the police.
No, so the police called him out after his bull was hit by a car on the highway, and he arrived with a rifle. It's standard procedure out there. You're responsible for dealing with your own animal if it's injured and needs to be put down. So the officers would have known that he was coming out with a rifle to put down his animal. But we don't. I mean, the eyewitnesses have said that Jack showed no kind of aggression towards the officers. But when he went to put down his animal, the officers grabbed him, his gun misfired, and then they ended up killing him. So if the officers didn't do anything wrong, the video should be released and it'll exonerate them. But they've tried awfully hard to prevent the video from coming out.
My name is Rebecca Barrow, and I'm originally from Council. Grew up there, graduated from the high school there in 2003.
So you've met Jack before?
Correct, yep, a few times. He used to have graduation parties at his house to keep all the kids safe. See him in town, always smiling. I know we hear that a lot, but it's true.
A pretty chill, laid-back fellow.
Yeah, very nice. Pretty disgusted by it. I don't know why they won't release the video. I don't know why they're not releasing more information. They're giving the excuse that it's for the investigation, but they release the video. I don't know how that's going to hurt the investigation in any way.
Can you think of any legitimate reason why they wouldn't have released the video or the audio of the shooting?
If the audio and video exists, the fact that they haven't released any information demonstrates to the public, those that are watching, that there is something incriminating and damning to the department, and they don't want us to see what's happening.
So, Will, you're an independent journalist from the area, and you're fairly familiar with the situation. Give us a basic rundown of what happened with Jack Yantis.
As far as we know, because the sheriff's office there and the Idaho State Police are being typically non-forthcoming with critical information, you have this individual, Jack Yantis, who is a well-established and well-respected rancher who, in response to a call from the sheriff's dispatch on a Sunday evening, went to take care of a bull who'd been in a collision on, I believe it was Highway 95, which is part of open range. Highway 95 bisects his property, and so he was told to go and help dispose of this bull that was wounded and potentially a hazard after it had precipitated a car accident involving a Subaru. And this is something which is fairly commonplace. This happens, as I understand it, probably a couple of times a month or more frequently up in Adams County, which is open range and which of course is inhabited by ranchers. So he and a son took a skid loader out to the scene of the accident. He was armed with a rifle, and as he was about to deliver the coup de grace to this traumatized animal, according to eyewitnesses, he was grabbed by one of the two deputies on the scene and then forced to turn around as he was about to discharge his rifle. And within a few seconds, he had been fatally shot several times by the deputies without any explanation. His wife, who was on the scene, was thrown to the ground and handcuffed and suffered a heart attack. I understand that his son was also handcuffed at the scene as well. The thing that I find most remarkable about this, apart from the fact that he was responding to the sheriff's dispatch, which meant that the sheriff's dispatch should have called the deputies to alert the deputies that he was on the way and he'd be carrying a rifle is the fact that you have once again an instance of escalation, hyper-escalation, from zero to lethal violence within a few seconds without finding out what the situation was or whether this type of approach was warranted by the sheriff's deputies, who's still not been named. Everybody in council seems to know the identity of these two deputies who are on paid vacation, which is, of course, standard operating procedure. The Idaho State Police is investigating this, and they are notoriously unreliable at investigating officer-involved deaths that involve sheriff's deputies. And the FBI has started another investigation into what's going on here. My assumption is that you have two separate investigations going on for the purpose of diffusing accountability rather than for the purpose of achieving transparency and some kind of factually supportable outcome. What I anticipate is that these investigations will end with a grudging and sorrowful but necessary justified ruling, which is to say the actions of the deputies will be considered reasonable under the Graham versus Connor Supreme Court decision of 1985, where we're supposed to look at what happened from the perspective of the proverbial reasonable officer on the scene. And if there's a sense that they are in any way imperiled by the actions of a suspect or a subject, then lethal force is justified, even though it wouldn't be for a common citizen, or as I call us, mere mundanes.
Can you think of a legitimate reason at this point as to why they have not released the video and the audio that exists? And the sheriff said, quote, he doesn't know whether there is audio from the officer's body cams or anything that survived from
He's
there.
very well aware of whether or not there's footage from the body cams. I don't believe that in a department that size that even the most heroically incompetent sheriff would not be able to find out very quickly if that footage existed. And so I think that that's at best disingenuous, at worst it's a damnable lie. But the other thing that I find troubling here is that we're at 3 weeks after the event. I think tomorrow will be 3 weeks since the killing of Jack Yantis. The shooters have not been identified, and there's no legal or moral or constitutional or procedural reason why their identities would be withheld from the public. As I mentioned, I think everybody in Council Adams County probably knows who they are. You're talking about a department that has, 7 or 8 patrol deputies, and so the absence of 2 from routine patrol would make them rather conspicuous. But there's no reason in law that would justify withholding the names of the shooters at this point. If Jack Yantis had been the shooter and a deputy had been a fatality, we would know the name of the shooter. He would have been charged very quickly. He might have been released on bail, but he would be confronted with the prospect of a criminal prosecution. However, this is being investigated almost certainly as what they call a suspected assault on law enforcement rather than a suspected criminal homicide. And so the prevailing assumption here is that this was a justified exercise of lethal force unless they can find compelling reasons to determine otherwise. And so the investigation right now essentially is geared toward validating what the deputies did rather than investigating whether what they did is criminal in nature. There's a possibility, a very small possibility, that they might still face criminal charges, but this would be an unusual and atypical outcome if standard procedures are being followed here. I think that, tragic as this is, it's going to have one beneficial effect, which is that people in Idaho and in other demographically similar communities are going to recognize that police abuse, police brutality, unlawful killings by police officers, these are things that don't merely happen in minority communities. They don't merely happen in inner cities. Often, in discussing these issues, people adopt the unfortunate lens of racial collectivism. And this is unfortunately something which is being done by the so-called Black Lives Matter movement. They're defining this purely in terms of ethnicity rather than looking at it as a question of the unwarranted and criminal exercise of lethal force by state agents. I'm hoping that because you have a rancher from a county in Idaho that is predominantly white, that people will understand that it isn't a matter of melanin content. It isn't a matter of ethnic background. It's a question of the state wielding criminal violence against an individual. And people will start having that conversation and ditch these stupid and useless racial collectivist categories that are being superimposed on the question.
Thank you, Will. I appreciate it.
Thank you, AJ.
Is it likely that we will see increased transparency from our local police agencies resulting from the tragic outcome of this incident? I certainly hope that happens. However, all indications so far appear that the opposite is more likely to be the rule. Thanks for watching.